I'll launch
Sure.
with our discussion of Timothy Egan's essay called "Against Nature" that was in the New York Times. Um, so my first question, which is always the question with an AP rhetorical analysis type essay, would be, what's Timothy Egan's purpose here? What's his overall goal?
Well, I think it would be
Is he trying to
to,
entertain us?
well, it is entertaining, but I don't think that's
Yeah,
his overall goal.
good call.
Um, I think it would be to inform. Uh,
Okay, definitely.
um, it seems like his I really focused in on his tone and the way he chose to inform. Um,
Is he
I
trying
found
to
him,
convince us of something? Is he trying to persuade us?
you know, I from from first thoughts, I thought this essay would be politically driven, probably due to maybe if there are any on the fence voters before the primaries this spring, um, maybe something to do with that.
Okay.
Because he's definitely swayed against the Republican side of Congress. I mean, at
That comes
least.
that definitely comes out.
Yeah, and I found it really interesting that he used Paul Ryan kind of as a medium between um, Rob Bishop of Utah. I he really uses that I feel to his advantage. Paul Ryan being a Republican and is almost speaking out against the craziness almost of Rob Bishop's ideas.
On here. Okay. So you also focused on his tone. If you could characterize his tone of voice using a term that we might use in AP, we always start with positive or negative or neutral.
You now I feel it's a negative tone in regards to the Republican Party. Um, it it's yeah, I'd say it's definitely negative.
Negative, yeah. So
Yeah, absolutely.
if you focused on let's take it from there. Let's because tone is really the if you're going to convince somebody of something, if you're going to persuade
Sure.
somebody, critical is your tone of voice. So Timothy Egan, let's just break it down. Title: Against Nature.
From there, it's
Your first thought when you see something like that is what?
the well, it's negative. It's
Yeah,
like destruction of or not for nature.
not
Someone who is
for nature.
against opposing nature.
Right. So if you were somebody who was against nature, that would put you in what category of people?
Exactly. You would be classified as perhaps in the same realm as Rob Bishop, perhaps.
Yes, exactly. So he sets it up pretty well with the title "Against Nature." You've got to be pretty extreme to be against nature. It's kind of like being against baseball,
Exactly.
that he uses, which is contrasting the good with the evil.
Yeah.
We've seen it in two paragraphs so far. Okay, let's move on to the third paragraph. But it has. What? I thought we weren't supposed to write little tiny sentences like that didn't weren't really clear.
And honestly, what he's trying, it works there because
Exactly.
he's it's an effective transition from that paragraph where he's saying that this feckless Congress has let the Land and Water Conservation Fund die, which he is almost insinuating as in murder, which I think
Right.
will go on further in the piece to say that Rob Bishop is instituting this murder of this fund as a chairman.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's an effective transition. He's answering a question that need not an answer.
Right. Exactly. It's rhetorical. We know where he's going with it. Needless to say, but it has transitions us. Now we're going to see. Well, let's see how that works. What does he mean? So he's got this blunt force, very brief, short, powerful sentence Neighborhood playgrounds, walking trails, bordering bustling cities, national parks, beaches, bridges, bike paths, and birding sites. What's he engaging in there? What technique?
He's using he's listing things that are going to appeal to the reader, definitely as things that they treasure or care about.
Okay, it's a pretty long list.
Yeah.
Why make a long list like that? What's the effect?
To try to hit home. Well, I mean, if you're maybe to make a full connection with the entire audience.
Okay, so create emphasis.
Yeah.
So, what are the connotations associated with the word imperiled?
Danger. You're at risk.
They're at risk. Now, what about imperious?
Um, I believe it's a derivative of imperial, so authority without a justification.
Exactly. So, simply because they wear the crown or they have the noble robes, they can do
Yes.
whatever they like. Exactly. So, good observation. He connected the word imperiled and imperious. So we get the repetition of that imp sound, but we also get the image of somebody behaving in a way where they can act with impunity,
Sure.
do harm, and not pay the price. Good call.
Yes. Thank you.
So in that just that short passage, we've got the short, effective, powerful sentence. We've got a serial listing, which adds emphasis because of the sheer weight of the length of the number of examples. How about repetition of any sounds in that sentence? The place in Pennsylvania where Flight 93 went down.
Oh, there are locations that are dear to many people's hearts.
Bingo. Yeah.
Yep.
So we've got these iconic references to iconic imagery that the common reader of this, the New York Times, which is going to be a general audience readership, they're going to hear that and go, yeah, I know that.
Exactly.
So,
Making a connection. Yep.
making a connection with the reader on a, what kind of a level? Would we call it a purely logical level, an emotional level?
I'd say
Does he?
a personal, maybe using the emotional value of it, so pathos at a.
Ethos, definitely. What about his credibility? If we're reading this so far, what has he done or said that might lead us to think this guy knows what he's talking about?
He's definitely he's writing in a formal style. Relatively, he's giving solid examples of
Okay.
to show that he's alluding to he knows what he's talking about. He's just not stating that. Well, I kind of know what I'm talking about. He definitely knows the issue that's at hand.
He's not making the claim alone. He's supporting it with some kind of factual reference.
With factual evidence.
Both of these would fall under that. Okay, let's take a look at the next paragraph. Watching Congress fall apart is amusing in some quarters.
I
Fair game.
in my mind, I looked at that sentence and I just wanted. He stated that, and I said, "Is it
Yes.
really?"
So here's something that we could always do, especially with an editorial that's written by somebody who's, let's face it, they're writing all the time. It's on the fly. We can at the same time we analyze this for what it effectively accomplishes. We can also question whether something worked or not. Did
Sure.
it work or not? If I say to you, was it effective? Why was it effective? And you could counter with, I don't think it was. I think it hurt his cause, which was to persuade us to believe him.
Sure. Yeah, and he does that several times in this piece. He's almost it's almost as he is looking from a different view, as if he was. I honestly, when I started reading this, I had to look his name up and say, is this guy an American journalist? Because it seems like he's looking from a different scope.
Yeah.
Because he's saying that your Congress, and it's amusing that it's falling apart. It's almost that he's an anti-American sympathizer.
He's an outsider. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like, don't include me in that.
Exactly. I'm not a part of this.
Yes. Okay. All right. So, and we do get later. We get that he's got an axe to grind, for
Yes.
sure. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so brinkmanship has replaced compromise. What, you remember the name of the technique? We call it brinkmanship has replaced compromise. Mom, no. We've got this.
Is it a juxtaposition?
Good. We've got the juxtaposition of two extremely,
Extremely different, yeah.
two extremely different images. So we've got the contrasting of opposites again, a structural meme that he uses throughout this. It's the good versus the bad. So we've got brinkmanship versus compromise. One thing is brinkmanship is no, it's negative. Compromise, it's what we want. It's positive. Yeah. So they do witch hunts and show trials. What do we call? Does he stop and tell us what witch hunts he's talking about or show trials?
No, he's kind of alluding that you're going to make the bizarre connection or even arcane connection between witch hunts or show trials. That's an old concept, but he's trying to relate it because it was definitely a negative thing at the time. So he's trying to relate that to the brinksmanship has replaced the compromise.
Got it. So he's making, like you correctly said, he's alluding. He's got historical allusions here. One, the witch trials, the show trials, any number of show trials we've had in our history. Okay, so he's made that pretty clear. And if we could characterize that technique he's using there, would you give it a name? Let's look back at it.
He's definitely he's using a parallel structure, and then he's almost using a parallel structure throughout the short paragraph, and then at the end he's almost using a you could consider it a periodical maybe by saying this is what they do, this is what they do, this is what they do, this is what they do as being the parallel structure, and then this is what they don't do as being the periodical, as ending the paragraph and keeping that at the helm of the mind.
Keeping the last thing there exactly, and it's kind of an obscure term, but that type of parallel structure where it ends with an extreme contrast we call antithesis.
Okay.
Antithesis.
Sure.
And really that's what it is. What they should do is the antithesis of what they haven't been. Okay, so let's look at the next paragraph. At the least, Congress should follow the advice given medical students on day one. First, do no harm, from the Latin primum non nocere, if I said that correctly. What's the effect there? Why give us the Latin?
To connect it with a this is a historical idea. This is a thing that's not new. It's definitely old. It's something that should and has been going on since the days of when Latin was actually a non-dead language and it was being used.
Therefore, it has value.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So a classic rhetorical technique here in an editorial or persuasive essay is showing these contrasts. Here's a good thing. Here's a bad thing. Putting them in, juxtaposing them. So in California, the threat is to a stretch of beach that a community has spent a decade raising funds to protect. In the Pacific Northwest, it's 42 acres of woodland at the edge of a metropolitan area of 3 million people. In Kansas, it's a historic site. What's he doing there that he did earlier in the piece?
He's definitely opening up the scope of he's opening up the scope of the view of his readers. So he's going West Coast. He's going up to the Northwest Pacific. He's going to Kansas. He's broadening his scope, so he's going to try to corral all these his different readers to try to bring it in and connect it to them.
So he's effectively solicited some allies in this campaign.